What's up, guys? We're back. The rotisserie's done, and that's allowed me to get some welding done on the underside. We've come through, we've tied the rear frame back together, finished welding here, finished welding the frame on the underside for what we put in for the mid chassis, and then done some seam welding on this thing. But I need to be able to flip the car over, so let's get it turned and finish up some more welding.
I'm spending money like I just got paid. $100 bills, tell them keep the change. Come on. If pop a bottle about to make it rain, let me give you something now to celebrate. Come on. And if you're wondering why I move the way I do, I just feel so good, good, good. Oh, 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 I just feel so good.
Don't blow out the mic. John says, don't blow out the mic. There we go. So what I've done here is when we put a flat plate on the rear section, this used to be recessed down. So I needed to tie this frame back to the body. So I just simply come in and put some sheet metal to tie the frame here, and then cut tube and conjoined them. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to finish stitch welding up now that I've got it turned over.
Are you ready? Ready to go? Are you ready? Ready for more? Are you ready? Ready for me? Oh my, you ready? Ready or not, we going, and I can't stop. Are you ready? Ready for me? Oh my, oh my. Gonna hit it big. I got my eyes on the prize.
So we're all done seam welding the car. Next thing is we're going to start fabricating the engine mounts. You may have seen in our other videos, the engine we're going to put in this car is going to be a K20Z1. This come out of an RSX Type S Honda engine. Should be very fun, high revving. We've got it coupled to an AP1 S2000 trans. And then we're actually going to run a 2007 STI differential. This will give us limited slip, and it actually bolts right up into the Crossmember. So no fabricating mounts here, but the next step really is we need to fabricate some mounts, get it mocked up in the car, and see where it fits, fabricate mounts for the side of the block, and bolt it to the Crossmember as well. That's what we work on. Okay guys, so I got the engine set in place. What we've done here is I've used a piece of angle iron and some threaded rods with a bracket in order to hold the engine at the tilt location it needs to be for two reasons. When you pair it to the S2000 engine, the engine sits at a tilted location, and I needed something to hold the engine while I was fabricating mounts. I've got the passenger side one done. I'm gonna work on the driver's side. But as I was kind of setting this up, I worked on getting the engine centered with the car. I've got a laser shooting from the center of the crank to the center of the trans, all the way down to the center of the diff. And then one thing to note here, on the back of the transmission, I've actually measured the angle it's at and looked at the pinion to try to get my right driveline angle. The driveline, the pinion has about 2 degrees of adjustment, so I'm not going to worry too much, but I'm actually sitting where it needs to go right now. So I'll end up getting the passenger side mount done, and then we'll move back to the trans to finish that mount. So let's get back to it. you good at all cutting stuff out in elementary school? I really wasn't. The teacher was like, hey, that looks good. You're like, you're my best friend. Thank you. Nobody else says that. So the process I've used for making mounts, I wanted to use a heavy duty bushing, so I bought it, and then I've burned out some tabs using the Crossfire. And what I do is I basically come down here and tack weld this to the Crossmember, and then I've been going back and forth trying to find a template that will work. So once I tack this in place, I can fit up a piece of tube in between the bushing and the plate that we burn out to fit. And then that's pretty much my mount. I'll tack it all in place in the car, take it off, finish welding it out, and then I'll put it back on. But I've kind of had to go back and forth a few times for that. But it worked out good on the passenger side mount, so.
I'm unconscious, ayy.
So I've got the engine mounts fabricated. It's time to move on to the transmission Crossmember. What I did is I just went to AutoZone and bought a T56 transmission bushing, and I've used some angle iron to fasten that to the side of the transmission. I've got my transmission sitting right now at about 1.5 degrees, and I'm going to leave some adjustment in there just to make sure that I get my driveline angle right. I've got about 2 degrees adjustment on the diff, so I should be okay there. My plan for the Crossmember is I'm actually going to take this tube, I've cut it to fit in the width between the frame rails that I've welded in the car, and I'm going to notch a section out so the bushing can fit down in there because the bushing hangs just a little bit lower. And then I'll leave me some room too to adjust up and down, so I've got that. So let's get to cutting this, get that notched out, and then I'll reinforce this area, and then we'll fabricate some tabs so I can actually bolt the transmission, the Crossmember brace to the frame rails. Holy crap. It's all good.
I'm unconscious, ayy.
Smash that subscribe button. Left click that like button. That was it.
Okay.
That was that.
I recorded that.
That's what you're going to use. Alright, so we got everything tacked up, it's all fitted up. I've got slots to move the bracket this way, and then I've got some slots in the crossmember to adjust this way if I need to. I've got about a 1/4 inch of play, which will give me right about a degree on the end of the transmission in case I need to fine tune that. But all I got left is I'll take a couple of these weld nuts, weld them into the frame underneath, and then maybe pretty up these brackets a little bit. But I'm pretty happy with how it turned out.
Yeah,